Donald Trump sufrió un nuevo revés dentro del Congreso y tiene que ver esto porque una audiencia organizada por los republicanos terminó saliéndose completamente de control. Lo que debía de ser un ataque en contra de los demócratas terminó dándole la oportunidad de cambiar el rumbo del debate y poner en aprietos a todos los aliados de Donald Trump con información que sorprendió incluso a quienes seguían la sesión en vivo. Quédense hasta el final porque lo que ocurrió en esta audiencia podría tener consecuencias políticas muy importantes. Estas audiencias del Partido Republicano acaban de estallar en la cara mientras que los miembros republicanos del Congreso de MAGA intentaban interrogar a los testigos demócratas y a otros para tratar de llevar a cabo estas audiencias de farsa en el Comité Judicial y en el Comité de Supervisión de la Cámara de Representantes. Vimos a demócratas como el miembro del Congreso Jamie Raskin básicamente tomar el control de la audiencia, dar vueltas las cartas y luego convertir esto en una audiencia dirigida por los demócratas. Y los de MAGA, como Jim Jordan y James Comer, no tenían ni idea de que esto fue lo que los golpeó. Permítanme mostrarles lo que pasó cuando tienen al miembro del Congreso Demócrata, Jamie Raskin, en esta audiencia sobre Dodge. Cómo el régimen de Donald Trump estaba tratando de, ya saben, actuar como que si todo fuera genial. Y Jamie Raskin lo usó para básicamente decir, hablemos de Dodge por un segundo. ¿Cuántos miles de millones de dólares en subvenciones ya estaban destinados a cosas como las fuerzas del orden locales, cuando fueron básicamente robados por el Dodge y nunca devueltos? Observen cómo Jamie Raskin descubre la asombrosa cifra. Miren, por favor.
It's more than $2 billion in grants that have not gone.
$2 billion, did you say?
$2 billion.
So what would that $2 billion have been able to do for local police forces around the country?
It would be used to hire officers. It would be used to train officers. It would be used to support officer wellness programs. It would be used to support resources.
Y permítanme mostrarles una parte más larga de eso donde pueden ver el contexto completo de lo que sucedió mientras que Jamie Raskin le hace a este testigo preguntas críticas sobre lo que realmente estaba pasando detrás del escenario en el Dodge. Miren cómo convirtió esta audiencia en una acusación en contra de Dodge. Un trabajo brillante de Jamie Raskin. Miren, por favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Pierce, I remember when we started this term of Congress and Elon Musk and Doge wiped out about $500 million of grants that were going to victim assistance groups, crime-fighting groups, local police departments. Nobody could quite explain why the particular Doge employee did that, but they wiped out about $500 million of grants going to help the families of victims and to try to stop crime. Can you discuss what happened there? What were those grants? Why did that happen? And what kind of effect does that have when money that we've appropriated from Congress for this purpose and the grants are programmed, they're wiped out? What effect does that have?
Sure, so it was actually $820 million in Department of Justice grants that they canceled. $500 million of which had already been granted. So that means the organizations that were receiving those grants had already started hiring staff, renting spaces. The communities that were going to receive those public safety grants had already started relying on that money coming in, and all of that was wiped away. I've recently been working with the Victim Rights Law Center, which is an amazing nonprofit organization in Massachusetts. They have lost 3 attorneys so far because of the way that the Department of Justice is messing with these public safety grants. That means victims, hundreds of victims of sexual assault and rape no longer have attorneys because that public safety funding has disappeared.
But it's not just victim assistance groups, it's also crime-fighting groups, and police departments had millions of dollars of grants that were canceled, correct?
Absolutely.
My recollection.
Yes.
So have the Office of Justice Programs grants from fiscal year 2025 been reinstated and distributed?
So we were talking about earlier about canceled grants, right? There's another problem with the Department of Justice grants in that they have significantly slowed down the amount of grants that are growing across the United States, not only for organizations, but also for police departments. And the fiscal year 2025 Department of Justice grants that go through the Office of Justice Programs have not been fully granted.
But why is that happening?
I don't know. The Department of Justice has not spoken to why this has happened. This is an unprecedented thing that has caused disruption across our country, and the Department of Justice is not telling anyone why they have been delaying this. It's more than $2 billion in grants that have not gone.
$2 billion, did you say?
$2 billion.
So what would that $2 billion have been able to do for local police forces around the country?
It would be used to hire officers. It would be used to train officers. It would be used to support officer wellness programs. It would be used to support resources for law enforcement, such as body cameras, different things that they desperately need.
Más aquí también de este contrainterrogatorio o simplemente haciendo lo suyo al testigo. Miren, por favor.
Our system is complex because it's a federal system. So we have national government, Department of Justice, federal policies, and then we have state and local policies. And there you described this tension, this hostility that's creating problems. Can you discuss how jurisdictions normally cooperate with the federal government in different ways? And how does it best work?
Sure. So, talking specifically about immigration enforcement, like I said during my testimony, every single law enforcement jurisdiction across the United States cooperates with immigration enforcement. Every time someone is booked, that information is sent to the Department of Homeland Security and to ICE. And then jurisdictions from there need to decide how much more of their local resources they will lend to ICE and immigration enforcement to help ICE do its job.
Okay. Will you just help us understand the different resources that are available to the federal government and then to local government police forces?
Sure. So as I said during my testimony, this Congress has provided ICE with $113.5 billion to do their job to enforce immigration law in the United States. And that is more than the combined annual operating budget of every single local law enforcement jurisdiction in America. So we're talking about local police departments that have limited amount of resources, and their primary duty is public safety. Their primary duty is not immigration enforcement. Meanwhile, we have a federal agency who has a budget larger than all but 4 militaries in the world. And their primary duty is civil immigration.
Así es como Jamie Raskin terminó con este testigo. Miren, por favor.
What would you suggest we work on a bipartisan basis in Congress in order to reduce criminal violence by undocumented immigrants, but in general, because there are people suffering these tragedies generally across the country? What can we do to bring down the crime rate generally and all of the violence?
Those resources that ICE receives should be targeted at the biggest public safety threats, right? We shouldn't have a federal agency that is running amok across the United States trying to fulfill a quota to get as many people into detention and deportation as possible. That's not making us safer. In addition, we need a federal government that's willing to work with local law enforcement jurisdictions. We have had ICE in the past have compromise and communication be their primary driver when they're working with local jurisdictions. That goes a lot farther than the bullying that we're seeing from this administration. That only increases the distrust that we're seeing at the federal level, between the federal level and the state.
Luego, antes de eso, Jamie Raskin, miembro demócrata del Congreso, miembro del mayor rango del Comité Judicial de la Cámara de Representantes, él llamó a ICE y a la patrulla fronteriza, Gestapo, en términos perfectos durante una audiencia republicana de MAGA que intentaba nuevamente dividir aún más el país y simplemente escupir odio y vitriolo en contra de los inmigrantes. Observen lo que hizo aquí el miembro del Congreso Jamie Raskin, cómo dio vueltas a las cartas. Miren por favor el clip.
So why are our colleagues so desperate to keep pulling this boogeyman of the sanctuary jurisdictions out of the closet? Well, perhaps it has to do with the fact that they voted to give DHS more than $250 billion to improve immigration enforcement. And America has watched as the Department of Homeland Security has used this staggering pile of money to waste on luxurious private jets for the secretary, complete with bedrooms and bars, on overpriced and ultimately useless industrial warehouses to detain human beings that are now being sold off at a massive loss to the taxpayers, on a glitzy $220 million public relations horseback photo shoot and ad campaign for a glamorous Department of Homeland Security secretary who called the slain citizens Alex Preddy and Renee Good terrorists. MAGA Republicans have done nothing as ICE has abused hundreds of billions of dollars to arrest, beat up, shoot, and even kill American citizens for exercising their First and Second Amendment rights. They've allowed ICE to ignore its duty to keep us safe from the worst of the worst, and instead gone after kids and parents coming home from kindergarten, rape survivors who just finished testifying in court, and volunteers at Catholic Church soup kitchens. ICE's indiscriminate and chaotic immigration enforcement has also undermined the ability of state and local prosecutors and law enforcement to keep their own communities safe and to deliver justice to victims of crime. They are deporting crime victims as well as key witnesses and informants without any notice to state or local police and prosecutors. As a result, investigations are being thwarted, criminal trials are being thrown into disarray, and American communities are less safe. House Judiciary Democrats put out a report called Acquitted by Removal, How Trump's Mass Deportation Agenda Abandons Crime Victims and Allows the Perpetrators to Avoid Justice, which I recommend that all of you check out. Not only is DHS not making our communities safer, it's making us worse off. A recent study found that the metro areas most targeted by ICE in both red and blue states had suffered losses of nearly 670,000 jobs, up to 44% of which were held by American citizens. The immigration roundup is profoundly costly to our communities. The administration's attacks on so-called sanctuary jurisdictions are hurting Americans from all walks of life. One can only regard with amazement the fact that rather than own up to this disastrous record, my colleagues are trying to change the subject and blame the failures of the Department of Homeland Security, not on Kristi Noem and her dysfunctional accomplices and successors, but on the state and local jurisdictions, which did not create the problem, have no real power to address it, and are constitutionally protected from being impressed into service, as Justice Scalia said, by an illegal commandeering policy.
Y luego, Jamie Raskin señala cómo ICE y la patrulla fronteriza ya tienen un presupuesto significativamente mayor al de más de 150 países y no nos han hecho más seguros. Ellos son los criminales, ellos son las Gestapo, ellos son las SS. Han hecho que las cosas sean mucho más peligrosas. Observen al miembro del Congreso, Jamie Raskin, cosas brillantes. Miren, por favor.
Walks of life. One can only regard with amazement the fact that rather than own up to this disastrous record, my colleagues are trying to change the subject and blame the failures of the Department of Homeland Security, not on Kristi Noem and her dysfunctional accomplices and successors, but on the state and local jurisdictions, which did not create the problem, have no real power to address it, and are constitutionally protected from being impressed into service, as Justice Scalia said, by an illegal commandeering policy passed by Congress. DHS has 250,000 employees and a budget larger than that of 150 countries on Earth. It has over 80,000 sworn law enforcement officers, more than the number of officers in New York, Chicago, LA, Houston, DC, Las Vegas, and Dallas combined. But despite all of that, our colleagues think that state and local jurisdictions should be using their money and their funds to do the Department of Homeland Security job for them. If our colleagues are serious about public safety, they should join us in imposing guardrails on ICE to refocus their energy on going after the worst of the worst and to ensure that they respect the fundamental rights of every U.S. citizen. They should reinvest in public safety programs that the administration has cut, that supported local law enforcement, assisted victims of crime, and gone after organized crime drug traffickers. And they should push back on the president's shocking abuse of the pardon power, which has allowed drug traffickers and international narco dealers and criminal fraudsters to walk free, depriving victims and taxpayers of nearly $2 billion in unmet restitution. Last Congress, we came together to craft a bipartisan border security bill. President Biden agreed to sign it, but then candidate Trump blew up the deal because he wanted a crisis to run on more than he wanted an actual solution. Sadly, since then, our colleagues have been doing more of the same, holding hearing after hearing on the same topic, failing to pass their signature border bill or even their bill to coerce and commandeer sanctuary cities to do their...
Déjenme saber qué piensan. Jamie Raskin simplemente es un, bueno, heroico. Él es el miembro de mayor rango. Si los demócratas toman el control de la Cámara, si los demócratas toman o tomaran el control de la Cámara de Representantes, él sería el presidente del Comité Judicial de la Cámara de Representantes y tendrá todo el poder de citación. Y abróchense los cinturones, amigos, porque van a hacer cosas muy agresivas, cosas muy interesantes y evidentemente cosas buenas para Estados Unidos si es que los demócratas por fin logran tener el control. Pero bueno, amigos, acabamos de llegar al final del video. Espero de todo corazón que les haya gustado. Si fue así, por favor, déjenmelo saber en los comentarios. Recuerden que si les gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, les va a encantar suscribirse al canal, ya que subimos videos como estos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarlos diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.